Okay, Mike, has AI training hit a wall? That is the
That
question of the
is
day.
the question of the day, of the week, maybe of the month, because this is a topic we are kind of basically just continuing a conversation about that we started last week. And we've got some more news and some more sources on this topic because more and more people in the AI community, at least some of them, appear to be asking, are we hitting a wall when it comes to scaling AI and improving AI models? Because right now we're getting more and more reports that major AI model companies are hitting roadblocks in their race to build their next generation of models. So, according to things like recent reporting from Bloomberg and The Information, OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic are all experiencing diminishing returns in their efforts to develop more advanced AI models, despite making massive investments in computing power and data. Last week, we talked a little bit about how OpenAI's latest model, which is codenamed Orion, hasn't met the company's performance expectations. It has particularly struggled with coding tasks. Similarly, we're hearing that Google's upcoming Gemini update is falling short of internal goals. And Anthropic has actually delayed the release of its anticipated Claude 3.5 Opus model. Now, the root of this problem appears to be threefold, according to all these sources. First, companies might be running out of high quality training data. So, the internet's freely available content, which powered the first wave of AI models, may no longer be enough to create significantly smarter systems. Second, even modest improvements now require enormous computing resources, which makes it harder to justify the costs. And third, this kind of long held belief in Silicon Valley that simply scaling up models with more data and more compute would lead to better performance, which is known as scaling laws, is being challenged. So this all has kind of come together in a narrative right now where prominent AI voices are claiming we are hitting a wall when it comes to AI development. And more importantly, we're not on as fast a path to artificial general intelligence or AGI as some AI leaders have previously led us to believe. For instance, Margaret Mitchell, chief ethics scientist at Hugging Face, put it to Bloomberg this way, quote, "The AGI bubble is bursting a little bit." So, Paul, maybe start us off from the top here and walk us through like what's going on here. We've talked about this topic a bunch of times, not just last episode, but throughout the year. Why are these conversations about hitting a wall getting so loud and prominent right now?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here, and the one about Anthropic and Claude Opus, and why we haven't seen that one. We're actually going to talk about that as the third main topic today because that was part of Dario Amodei and Anthropic did that massive interview with Lex Friedman. So we'll get into Dario's thoughts on this. But in essence, media reports and some AI antagonists are claiming the scaling laws are slowing down or plateauing, but many voices inside the labs say there's no end in sight. So just this week, we got a tweet from Sam Altman, November 14th, said there is no wall, I guess last week. We'll put the links to these in. You can go check them out for yourself. We had Oriol Viñals from Google DeepMind, VP of Research and Deep Learning lead at Google DeepMind. He replied, "What wall?" in response to a new benchmark that we'll talk about in a rapid fire item that showed Google has a forthcoming model that is now number one on the benchmark leaderboard. And then Miles Brundage, who we talked about on episode 121, who was the former senior advisor for AGI readiness at OpenAI. So someone who certainly is aware of what OpenAI is doing, but also no longer has to toe the company line because he is independent now and was very vocal on his way out, as we talked about in episode 121. So he doesn't really have a stake in, continuing to push OpenAI messaging if it's not true. He tweeted, "Betting against AI scaling, continuing to yield big gains is a bad idea. Would recommend that anyone staking their career, reputation, money, etc. on such a bet reconsider it." So, that being said, it does appear, based on reports, that there have been delays in some of the frontier models that we expected to see in 2024. So we could think like a Gemini 2, a Claude Opus 4, a GPT-5 or Orion. Like we kind of assume we might see all those models, a Llama 4. Um, so a few thoughts here. One, the year isn't over yet. So there's certainly still the possibility we're going to get smarter, bigger, more generally capable models. The labs don't share their model release plans. So while we may have been anticipating these models by year end, they may not have. Um, and then the third and maybe the most important aspect of this is these models are complex. They're not traditional software where you just brute force a bunch of code and you release a model that does what you want it to do, and then you fix some flaws after you release it. These things are not they don't work like that software. They don't do what you want them to do all the time. And oftentimes it's not till you train the model that you find the flaws or deficiencies, or that maybe it doesn't do what you wanted it to do as well. And you have to go in to retrain it, or you have to fine tune it after the fact.
Mm.
And so as these models get bigger, they get more complicated to train, to post train, to red team. Red teaming again is like the idea of testing and evaluating a model's vulnerabilities, limitations, risks. So maybe you train this massive thing and then you realize this is too dangerous. Like there's too many risks associated with this thing. It has too many emergent capabilities. We can't release this thing. We got to go back and like fine tune this and do more post training to make it safe enough to put out. This is like, I think, kind of what we saw with the advanced voice mode from OpenAI. You have the thing ready, you've done the training, you've done all the testing, but then you realize it's got some capabilities that we cannot release. And so we have to now make it safer. So as they get bigger, it's going to be harder to project what's going to happen. And as we'll hear from Dario, I'll kind of walk through what goes into training and preparing these models. And people will realize like, this isn't a, you run do a training run and 30 days later, you just release the thing. That is not
Yeah.
how these work. So my current bet would be the fact that the labs will continue to push the scaling laws. They will continue to do more compute, more data, likely with new approaches to maximize performance and capabilities. So the labs are going to keep buying NVIDIA chips to do the training. We're going to keep hearing about massive data centers being built. We're going to continue to hear about massive investment in energy infrastructure. That's going to be a major priority of the incoming administration. It's going to be in the United States. It's going to be a major priority of people like Sam Altman to push this. The labs and the governments will spend tens of billions of dollars next year on training and building these models. Within 2 to 3 years, they will be spending hundreds of billions of dollars to build bigger, more generally capable models. So whether the scaling laws as we have known them remain exactly true or not, I don't think it really matters. And I don't think all these headlines about the scaling laws plateauing or different, people kind of taking a victory lap who are the general antagonists of the AI models and the scaling laws. I think those victory laps will be seen as premature in the end.
Mm.
So when we talked about this last week on episode 123, there was a few things I highlighted. So one was that a lot of these leaders of the frontier labs, like Sam Altman, Demis Hassabis, they have been very public that they see there needs to be maybe 2 to 3 breakthroughs to unlock like the true intelligence, powerful AI, AGI, whatever you want to call it, sort of the model that takes like a massive leap forward from what we have today, like a GPT-4o. And so that has been known. Now, the things I highlighted in that episode was reasoning, the O1 model from OpenAI. We're under the assumption we're going to get the full O1 model soon. Multimodal training, where they're not just trained on text, but images and video and audio. The idea that there'll be a symphony of models working together, that the large models will be kind of like a conductor working with a bunch of smaller models. The concept of self-play or recursive self-improvement, where the models are able to identify their own flaws and kind of fix them as they're going. And then memory. There was actually an interview, I don't think we have it on the list to talk about today, but Mustafa Solomon did an interview last week and he was talking about memory. Maybe we touched on this last week. I don't remember.
I think we did briefly.
Ironically,
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Uh, but memory is a huge one and he thinks it'll be solved by next year.